every single story, there comes a pivotal moment. It is the first major event in the story, the primary cause for all that follows. It puts the story in motion. It is known as the inciting incident. This is the moment that causes your character, the hero of your story, to make a change, to take an action, and to change the world around them for the better. It's a potentially inconsequential moment that creates a meaningful change in the life of our hero. So as you're thinking about your story, you need to think about, well, what is this incident going to be? What is the conflict that they come up against? What is the change that they need to make? Who is the enemy? What are they against? Why should the hero go on this journey? Why should they make the change? If you're trying to sell something, the inciting incident should also act as a trigger. A trigger are stimuli that prompt people to think about related things. So if you think about breakfast, you may think about a certain cereal that you eat or a certain type of fruit smoothie that you make. People often talk about whatever comes to mind. So the more often people can think about your product or idea, the more it will be talked about. What is more commonly spoken about? Disneyland or Cheerios? It's Cheerios because breakfast is a more common thing. We may think, well, Disneyland is big and popular, but there isn't as common a trigger moment to have the discussion about that product. It's about making sure that there is an action in your business story that is easy for somebody to say, hey, I go through something similar to that. I'm going to take this same action. The way that you can think about doing this for your brand is to actually think about four potentially inconsequential moments that may have happened to you or somebody that you work with, or maybe one of your customers. You can break this up into these four quadrants. The first is, what was the best moment you had? So in other words, using your product, what was the best moment? Or what was the moment that was so inspiring to you, you realize, oh, I need to take an action here. My best moment, for example, was I sat at an event a while ago and saw this amazing presentation from this absolutely incredible speaker who really captivated the audience. And I realized, wow, I want to do that as well. I want to replicate that. And now I'm on this journey. That for me was an inciting incident. You can also think about your worst moment. Maybe something terrible happened to you in work and you decided, do you know what? I'm going to make sure this never happens to me again or never happens to anybody else. And you've decided to take an action to do something about it. What was the first moment? The first moment that somebody utilized your product or service, or maybe the first moment that you did something different and you realized, hey, maybe other people could do the same thing. What was the last moment you did something and then you stood up and you said, this is going to be the last time I ever do this? I worked with a company a while ago who they were really working on creating a CRM system for businesses. And they realized that the inciting incident for them came from their co-founders. It was the last moment that they worked at their previous company where they could not track down who the key point of contact was at a client that they'd spoken to 4 months previously. They couldn't decide who was the key point of contact. And they realized that the CRM system was not intuitive enough to pick up the amount of communications that they had sent to this person, the amount that this person had engaged with their product or service. And as a result of that, they realized that there was a need there to grow. It was the last time that they said they ever wanted to consider who was the main point of contact that they needed to talk to. So they decided to do something about it. So this best, worst, first, last. Think about how your product or service relates to this. Think about a best moment, a worst moment, a first moment, and a last moment. And what you may find is that you may discover a trigger or an inciting incident that you can tell in your story. It would be an inciting incident because as you tell your story, it's the moment that the hero makes a change. It can be a trigger because in your marketing, you can potentially include it so that people can remember that this product or service goes with this action. A great example of a brand using an inciting incident or a trigger in their marketing is Kit Kat. Kit Kat, the chocolate bar. If you remember what their slogan is, have a break, have a Kit Kat. It's a very simple trigger. If you are going on a break, have a Kit Kat. They have given people a trigger within their marketing that if you are going on a break, in the back of your mind, you may remember what that action that you need to take is, having a Kit Kat. They've given you the inciting incident to your story as you go about your day. Your inciting incident for today is, I'm going to have a break. I'm going to have a Kit Kat. I need to do something. You're taking an action. Without the inciting incident, there would be no story. So inciting incidents create the need for change, the need for our hero to go on our journey. If we take a look at TVs and movies, look at Star Wars, for example, Luke Skywalker from the beginning of that movie wanted to do something more. He wanted to do something bigger. He wanted to do something better. But it took an inciting incident for him to actually do something about it. He wanted to do something, but he didn't need to do something. So they created an inciting incident. It actually doubled up in Star Wars. There was the message from Princess Leia for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then the second thing was his aunt and uncle being murdered by the Empire. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen Star Wars. But this was the inciting incident that set everything else in motion. It was that one trigger that made Luke Skywalker go from wanting to do something to needing to do something. So when you're thinking about your marketing activities and you're thinking about the story that you're telling about your brand, think of like how you can create that kind of inciting incident that results in your hero taking a journey, making a change. And when you're putting your audience at the center of the story, this then becomes a trigger for them to take action by your product or service.